My next guest has served in the House of Representatives for a little less than a decade, but in that time, Congresswoman Katherine Clark has managed to climb up to the highest levels of leadership in her party. Back in 2018, she was elected vice chair of the Democratic caucus. In 2020, she became Assistant Speaker of the House. And now, with the imminent Republican takeover of the House, she's running to become the second most powerful Democrat. The party whip, Congresswoman Clark, joins me now. Nice to see you.
Good to be here, Jim.
Congratulations sort of in advance. But so the Democrats have been celebrating the absence of a red wave in the midterms, but there is a red majority come January. What message do you think the voters were sending?
I think they rejected extremism. We saw every election denier lose their race. And I think we saw women and young people say that abortion matters, healthcare matters, fundamental rights matter, and they understood that reproductive justice is an economic issue at its heart. And also, you know, young voters said climate matters. Yeah. And so I think there is a blueprint for the future, that if we continue our work focusing on the American family and making progress for the challenges that face them, we will be back in the majority in 24.
Speaking of message, just briefly, what message do you think Trump was sending the other night when he had an avowed, proud anti-Semite at dinner, plus a white nationalist, Holocaust denier, Hitler-loving Fuentes? What message did Trump send to the American people?
The same message he's been sending. This is about his power. It is about the power of the GOP, and they'll take it from wherever they can. And if that means extremism, white supremacists, dividing, turning neighbor against neighbor, they are fine with that.
So in your letter to your colleagues urging that they vote for you for the #2 position, we'll talk about the whole troika in a few minutes, you talked about the dangerous agenda of the Republicans in the majority. What is the dangerous agenda that you most fear, Congresswoman?
I fear they're going to roll back progress. I fear there will be a national abortion ban and places...
Which would never pass the Senate, nor be signed by Joe Biden, correct?
Well, exactly. And thank goodness that we held those majorities and that we have Joe Biden in the White House, because that is their vision, is a national abortion ban that would make places like Massachusetts no longer safe and reliable for women. They want to take away Social Security and Medicare in order to, in order to pay for a so-called balanced budget.
You really think they do that? I know Rick Scott talked about that, the guy who wanted to be the new Mitch McConnell, but do you think the average Republican is ready to get rid of something that older voters, many of whom, most of whom vote Republican, consider to be their lifeline?
I think you will see it. I think it is part of the deal that Kevin McCarthy is making in order to become Speaker. So I think you will see proposals to dramatically change and curtail those programs.
You know, speaking of Kevin McCarthy, forget the lunatics, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Lauren Boeberts. You know these people. Does Kevin McCarthy really believe this crap about the 2020 election? Does he, when he bends at the knee to salute Donald Trump, this is all about personal advancement? It's not about belief, is it, or am I missing something?
I have no idea what he actually believes, because it is all about his own power and having that title of Speaker. Mm-hmm. He has led the House over the last years that he's been minority leader with obstruction. I don't know what he stands for. And when I look across this country, it's not just Democratic families that are having a hard time affording health care. It's not just Democratic families that are worried about clean air and clean water. These are issues that are across our country, across Republican families, and Kevin McCarthy needs to address them.
You know, one issue you didn't mention that concerns you, I know a lot of your fellow Democrats have mentioned, is this this desire or the intention to investigate Hunter Biden. Here's the guy who's going to lead the Oversight Committee, Congressman Comer, speaking just the other day about this. Here he is.
Committee Republicans have spoken with multiple whistleblowers from numerous schemes involving the Biden family. Rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse will be the primary goal of a Republican House Oversight Committee. As such, this investigation will be a top priority.
I don't quite understand what the concern is. The facts as I know them, just as one item, Hunter Biden made $50,000 a month from a Ukrainian energy company while his father, as vice president, was investigating corruption. Why isn't it appropriate to look into whether or not the money was ill-gotten, whether he got any of the benefits he got, and there are other things too, as a result of the influences of his father? Isn't that a legitimate thing for the American people to know?
What is legitimate is putting the needs of the American people first. This is about political theater and distraction and more tools to divide us and courting the crazy culture of the far right and extremism in the GOP. I mean, let's just look back to the last Congress and the leadership that they showed. The infrastructure bill, something for everybody, roads, bridges, broadband, green good jobs, 13 votes. The Inflation Reduction
Just 13
Act,
Republicans votes.
13
yeah.
Republican votes.
Yeah.
The gun violence bill that was actually bipartisan in the Senate. Common sense measures to help us reduce gun violence and a historic investment in mental health. 0 Republican votes in the House.
So what are you going to be able to do? I know that there's a lot of discussion about the Democrats rushing before the Republicans take over in the House to do as much as they can. Obviously, the Respect for Marriage Act, which is a terrific advancement, is likely going to become law in light of the fact that 12 Republicans in the Senate supported it. That's going to happen. By the way, what's your reaction to Mitch McConnell, who, as far as I know, is in an interracial marriage, voting against codifying interracial marriages and LGBTQ same-sex marriages? What was your reaction when you heard about that?
Well, if he's not going to stick up for his own family, I don't know how we can possibly trust him to stick up for ours.
What else are you going to do before the Republicans take over? From Nantucket, I know you know, and I know you led the sit-in with the revered former Congressman John Lewis on guns, and I think it was 2016. You heard the president say from Nantucket, it may be a long shot, he still wants to deal with assault weapons before the Republicans take over the House. That's virtual non-possibility. It may, obviously, it's fine in the House with the Democratic majority. There's no chance passing the Senate.
We've
right?
already passed it in the House, but we need 10 votes in
Not gonna
the
happen.
Senate, and I don't see it.
How about codifying Roe? Impossible in the Senate as well, correct?
Again, the Senate has been committed to obstruction and opposing these things. And with the filibuster, it is a 60-person majority, and that's a hard limit to reach.
You were with Congresswoman Presley, I believe, and others at the Supreme Court around the abortion decision. Is that correct?
That's
Were you
right.
arrested, by the way?
I was.
What was that like?
Well, you know, it was an interesting phone call from my husband who wanted to know what I was doing and was I going to be able to come home that night.
Did that really happen?
That really did happen.
Okay.
But you know, it's more about that we simply can't let the clock get turned back. And women in this country understand it. And as we see the stories, Jim, that are coming out of Texas about the real decisions that doctors are having to make with patients that are endangering women's lives because of the laws that the Texas legislature have passed, this is a reality for far too many Americans, that this fundamental private choice is now something that is decided in our state houses and state capitals instead of with our doctors, our families, and our own faith.
So when the Democrats regain control of the House, assuming the Senate's in Democratic control too, Larry Tribe and former federal judge Nancy Gertner have been here pretty regularly. They sat on the Presidential Commission on the Reform of the Supreme Court. They both went in supporting term limits and leaning against expansion of the court. They came out in the opposite direction, primarily because they believe you need to change the Constitution for term limits. Some people disagree, but not for expansion. Is there anything you, as a soon-to-be leader of the Democrats, support in terms of dramatic reform? These Trump nominees are in their 40s and young 50s. They're going to be here for a lifetime. What do we do about that other than do some fundamental reform to the structure of the Supreme Court?
I mean, obviously, we have to look at every single possibility as we look at a Supreme Court that has become very active and for the first time, I believe in our country's history, rolled back rights in the Dobbs decision. We so often haven't gotten it right going forward in the way we should, but this is really unprecedented that we took away 50 years of a right to reproductive justice from women. So with that, you know, we have to remain open to looking at all kinds of possibilities and keep working to get the majority back.
You know, if people haven't read, I should have mentioned, I felt your piece in the Globe, I think it was in February, about your own miscarriage and the procedure to remove fetal tissue was really an important and brave contribution to the debate, and I should have mentioned it before, and congratulations on that.
Well, and I'm sorry that that has become a real concern for so many women in this country. When I wrote it, I hope that would never have happened. But here we are today, where those fundamental medical decisions are being taken away and out of the hands of women. And that's what we're up against. That's what I mean by a dangerous agenda.
Let's talk about you for a minute. Modesty aside, what does it mean to Massachusetts to have the second most powerful Democrat, even if in a minority? What does it mean to the state to have someone like you as the #2 Democrat?
Well, let me tell you, every single day when I pull open that door of the House of Representatives, I am so proud to be from Massachusetts. We are the center of innovation and progress. And you look at the ACA, modeled after our healthcare law. We're first in the country in marriage equality, but we also face tremendous challenges that other parts of the country do as well, like affordable housing, how we work on our public transportation system, how we continue to address climate change and build a green economy where everyone can benefit.
But we'll do better on all those fronts because you're in the leadership, will we not? I mean, that is the reality, is it?
Well,
not?
I can tell every single Massachusetts family that they come and sit with me at the leadership table. And when you are sitting at that leadership table, you were able to steer the conversation and the policies. And if it works for here in the 5th District of Massachusetts and the Commonwealth as a whole, it's good for the country.
Here is someone you're pretty close to, Nancy Pelosi, announcing that she's stepping down from leadership. This is November 17th. Here's Speaker Pelosi.
With great confidence in our caucus, I will not seek re-election to Democratic leadership in the next Congress. For me, the hours come for a new generation to lead the Democratic caucus that I so deeply respect.
Okay, so Hakeem Jeffries as the leader, you as #2, Aguilar from California is #3. Did she put this troika together, or how did this come about?
You know, first let's just pause and take note of Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
She did a pretty good job, huh?
She's an iconic speaker and is really going to go down as a speaker of the ages. And what she did was help break a mold by being the first woman to lead the House as Speaker.
You're the second ever to be in as high a position. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that, but you know that.
But she also has encouraged us to develop our own leadership styles. And,
Did she pick the three of you? That's what I want to know. Did she say to the members, quietly or otherwise, these are the three people who should be leading the Democratic Party in the House?
You know, we really came together as a partnership that has worked over the years. Hakeem Jeffries and I started working together in 2018. He was working on messaging. I was working on recruiting candidates.
Why are you not at the top of that triumvirate? Why? I'm serious. I mean, why is it Hakeem Jeffries 1 and Katherine Clark 2? Why is it not Clark 1 and Jeffries 2?
Well, first of all, it is about team. I have never cared about titles. It's about the work. And what I see in the whip position is continuing the work I've done, putting people together with solutions, building consensus, and driving us forward. And that's what we're committed to. And I think that's what's so exciting about working with this team and with the Democrats as a whole.
Don't you feel don't you feel a colossal burden? I mean, you're in the minority too, and so obviously you've got to stop what you consider to be a dangerous agenda. I mean, it is I know it's an honor, and I know you're going to say that, but that's a pretty heavy burden, is it not, Congresswoman?
It's a huge responsibility. And the reason that I want to be part of this is because I feel that, as Thomas Paine said, the times have found us. And this is a moment of transition for Democrats in Congress, but it's also a moment where our country's going to decide which path we take. And I hope to be part of the Democratic push for democracy, for liberty and equality.
Okay, so generally the thinking is, I'm no expert on the Catholic Church, but you don't want a pope looking over your shoulder. And there's a pope and an ex-pope. As much as I hear things like it's great to have a skilled hand like Pelosi and like Hoyer and like Clyburn around, it's pretty intense to have maybe the most powerful speaker in the history, or at least in recent history, still there as a rank and file member. Are people like Jeffries and you, I know you have great respect for, not concerned, not worried about that at all, her huge presence?
I'm not worried about that because the speaker understands there's one speaker, one leader at a time. And she has been very clear that she is there to help, to guide, if we want advice, to give it, but she also is letting us chart our own course.
Two last things. I am a great admirer of Pelosi, but to be candid, I thought she had to go primarily because I think having three octogenarian Democrats leading the Democratic Party is a mistake. There is a guy who, if he runs for re-election, would be well into his 80s, Joe Biden. He said he and his family were discussing it this weekend. I think you told me, I know you've told others, but I think you told me you would have supported Pelosi if she sought the speakership or the leadership position again. Will you support Joe Biden if he runs for president again?
I will.
Even though would be well into his young 80s?
I would,
Okay.
because of the work we've been able to do together and his vision for this country.
Okay, before you go, the thing I left off the list that you're going to do, I'm a huge believer in permanent daylight saving time. I believe you are too. Is that not correct?
That is true.
It passed the Senate unanimously. You're going to help make this law before you become the minority?
We're going to do the budget first, but we'll see what we can do.
Right after, right? Congratulations. I wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you so much,
Katherine
Jim.
Clark, thanks so much.